The year was 1933. America was in the grip of the Great Depression. Gangsters roamed the land, leaving a trail of fear and violence. In this tumultuous era, Charles F. Urschel was a beacon of success. An oil tycoon from Oklahoma City, Urschel had amassed a fortune in the booming oil industry. He lived a life of privilege, far removed from the struggles of ordinary Americans. But on a fateful summer evening, Urschel's world would be turned upside down. July 22nd, 1933, began like any other day in the Urschel household. The sun beat down on Oklahoma City, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns of the city's elite. Inside the Urschel mansion, life moved at a leisurely pace. Unbeknownst to them, a sinister plan was unfolding. A group of hardened criminals, led by the notorious George Machine Gun Kelly, had been watching their every move. They saw an opportunity to score big, to take what they believed was rightfully theirs, their target, Charles F. Urschel. As dusk settled over the city, two men approached the Urschel home. Armed and dangerous, they forced their way inside. Urschel and his wife were caught completely off guard. Terror gripped their hearts as the intruders made their intentions clear. Charles Urschel was being kidnapped. A ransom note demanding an exorbitant sum of money was left behind, a chilling reminder of the danger he was in. News of the kidnapping spread like wildfire. The audacity of the crime shocked the nation. Charles F. Urschel, a man of immense wealth and influence, had been snatched from his own home. Fear and uncertainty gripped Oklahoma City. The streets, once bustling with life, were now eerily quiet. The Urschel family, thrust into a nightmare they never could have imagined, grappled with the unthinkable. Each passing moment felt like an eternity, the silence deafening. They clung to hope, praying for Charles's safe return. The weight of the ransom demand hung heavy in the air. Could they meet the kidnappers' demands? And even if they did, would it be enough to guarantee his safety? The kidnapping of Charles Urschel wasn't just a local story, it captivated the nation. Newspapers across the country splashed the story across their front pages. Radio broadcasts were interrupted with the latest updates. Urschel's plight became a symbol of the lawlessness that seemed to pervade the country. The nation watched and waited, holding its breath, hoping against hope for a happy ending. The gravity of the situation was not lost on the authorities. The kidnapping of Charles Urschel was a brazen act of defiance, a direct challenge to law and order. The pressure was on to bring the perpetrators to justice. Into this maelstrom stepped a relatively new force in American law enforcement, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI. The Bureau, still in its infancy, was eager to prove its worth. Led by the young and ambitious J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI wasted no time in taking charge of the investigation. Hoover, recognizing the high stakes involved, dispatched his best agents to Oklahoma City. The G-men, as they were known, brought with them a reputation for thoroughness and tenacity. They were determined to leave no stone unturned in their pursuit of the kidnappers. The Urschel mansion, now a crime scene, was transformed into a hive of activity. Agents swarmed over every inch of the property, meticulously collecting evidence. Interviews were conducted, leads were followed, and a nationwide manhunt was underway. The G-men were relentless, driven by a single-minded focus to find Charles Urschel and bring his kidnappers to justice. The chase was on. The ransom note, a stark message delivered with chilling intent, demanded $200,000 for Charles Urschel's safe return. The gravity of the situation wasn't lost on anyone. The kidnappers, emboldened by their brazen act, seemed to hold all the cards. But the Urschel family, determined to bring Charles home, refused to be drawn into a game of chance. They would play by the kidnappers' rules for now, but they would not do it blindly. They would fight back, strategically, and with unwavering resolve. John G. Catlett, a trusted friend of the Urschel family, was chosen to act as their intermediary. Catlett, a man of unwavering loyalty and calm under pressure, became the family's lifeline to Charles. He would be their voice, their eyes and ears in the perilous dance with the kidnappers. Every word he uttered, every action he took, carried the weight of Charles's life in the balance. The FBI, working tirelessly behind the scenes, saw an opportunity in the ransom demand. This wasn't just about rescuing Charles Urschel, it was about bringing down a dangerous criminal enterprise. They would use the ransom drop as bait, a carefully laid trap to catch the kidnappers off guard. The stakes were incredibly high, but the G-men were confident. They had the element of surprise on their side. Every detail of the ransom delivery was meticulously planned, a delicate balance between ensuring Charles's safety and apprehending the kidnappers. The money, carefully marked and documented, would become a beacon, leading the FBI straight to their quarry. The trap was set, the players in place. The stage was set for a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. Section 2. A tense journey. Kirkpatrick and Catlett head to Kansas City. Following the kidnappers' instructions, Catlett, accompanied by E. Kirkpatrick, an associate of Urschel's, embarked on a tense journey to Kansas City. Their destination, the Muehlebach Hotel, a grand old dame of a building, teeming with secrets and intrigue. Every click of the train wheels, every mile that passed, heightened the tension. The weight of their mission pressed down on them, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked around every corner. As a precaution, a seemingly innocuous cargo accompanied them, a bag filled with old magazines. But this was no ordinary reading material. Concealed within the pages, tucked away from prying eyes, lay the $200,000 ransom. It was a risky move, transporting such a large sum of money on a crowded train, but it was a calculated risk, one they were forced to take. Kirkpatrick, tasked with safeguarding the money, took his role seriously. He positioned himself strategically in the observation car, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. Every passenger, every glance in their direction sent a jolt of paranoia through him. Were they being watched? Was someone onto them? The uncertainty was agonizing. Despite their precautions, the journey was uneventful. The train, a steel ribbon cutting through the heartland of America, delivered them to Kansas City without incident, but the relative calm was a deceptive prelude to the storm that was to come. The real test, the true measure of their courage, was about to begin. Section 3, Waiting in the Shadows, a mysterious telegram and a midnight phone call. The Muehlebach Hotel, a bastion of luxury and elegance, became Kirkpatrick's gilded cage. Confined to his room, he paced back and forth, the silence amplifying the pounding in his chest. He was a man on edge, a tightly wound spring waiting to snap. Every creak of the floorboards, every muffled sound from the hallway outside sent his pulse racing. A telegram arriving with an air of urgency shattered the stifling silence. Signed C.H. Moore, it was a cryptic message alluding to an unavoidable incident and a promise of a phone call. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken threats and the chilling realization that they were playing a dangerous game, one where the rules were constantly changing. As the clock ticked past midnight, the shrill ring of the telephone pierced the darkness. Kirkpatrick, his hand trembling, cautiously answered. A voice, gruff and laced with menace, confirmed his worst fears. It was Moore, and he was calling the shots. He instructed Kirkpatrick to leave the hotel immediately and proceed to a predetermined location, alone. The ransom drop was about to happen, and Kirkpatrick was the pawn in their deadly game. Section 1. A shadowy exchange. The ransom is paid. The LaSalle Hotel, bathed in the eerie glow of streetlights, loomed before Kirkpatrick. His heart pounded against his ribs, each thud a stark reminder of the danger that surrounded him. The weight of the ransom money, a small fortune concealed within the innocuous-looking bag, seemed to increase tenfold with every step he took. He walked west, as instructed, his senses on high alert. The street, usually bustling with life, was strangely deserted. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the distant wail of a siren and the rhythmic echo of his own footsteps. Each shadow seemed to hold a hidden threat, every passing car a potential getaway vehicle. Suddenly a figure emerged from the darkness, a shadowy silhouette against the dim streetlights. "Mr. Kincaid," the figure rasped, his voice barely a whisper above the city's din. Kirkpatrick's breath caught in his throat. This was it. The moment of truth. The man, his face still hidden in shadow, reached out a hand. "I'll take that bag," he said, his voice cold and devoid of emotion. Kirkpatrick, his hand trembling slightly, handed over the ransom money. His instructions had been explicit. No questions, no heroics. The safety of Charles Urschel depended on his compliance. Back in the sterile confines of his hotel room, Kirkpatrick paced restlessly. The ransom had been paid, but the ordeal was far from over. The kidnappers had promised Urschel's release, but could they be trusted? Doubt gnawed at Kirkpatrick's resolve. Every minute that passed felt like an eternity, the silence punctuated by the insistent ticking of the clock. Finally, the phone rang, the shrill sound sending a jolt of adrenaline through him. It was a message from the kidnappers, short and to the point. Urschel would be released unharmed. Relief, like a tidal wave, washed over him. He had played his part, and Charles Urschel was coming home. With a renewed sense of purpose, Kirkpatrick boarded the first train back to Oklahoma City. The journey, once fraught with tension, now held the promise of a joyful reunion. As the miles sped by, Kirkpatrick allowed himself a sliver of hope. Charles Urschel would be safe, and the nightmare would be over. But even in the midst of his relief, a chilling thought lingered in the back of his mind. The kidnappers were still out there, somewhere, their faces hidden, their identities a mystery. The Urschel mansion, once shrouded in fear and uncertainty, erupted in celebration as Charles returned home. The ordeal had taken its toll, leaving him visibly shaken and exhausted, but he was alive, and for that everyone was grateful. The weight of his 9-day captivity, however, hung heavy in the air. The details of his abduction, the endless hours spent blindfolded and bound, remained a closely guarded secret, a silent burden that he carried within him. The joy of his return was tempered by the knowledge that the nightmare was not truly over. The kidnappers were still at large, and the FBI, working tirelessly behind the scenes, had vowed to bring them to justice. Urschel's testimony, his first-hand account of the ordeal, would be crucial in bringing his captors to justice. But for now, he remained silent. The weight of his ordeal etched on his face, a stark reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of their newfound peace. The silence in the room was heavy, punctuated by the scratch of a pen on paper. Charles Urschel, his voice a low murmur, recounted the harrowing details of his abduction to the attentive FBI agents. His words, measured and precise, painted a vivid picture of that fateful night. He described the sudden intrusion, the chilling realization that his life was in danger, the fear that gripped him as he was forced from his home. The agents, their faces etched with concern, listened intently, absorbing every detail, every nuance of Urschel's story. Urschel's memory, sharp despite the trauma he had endured, was a crucial weapon in the FBI's arsenal. He recalled being blindfolded, the rough fabric cutting into his skin, the world plunged into darkness. He spoke of the disorientation, the fear that gnawed at him with each passing moment, the uncertainty of his fate. The agents, their faces grim, exchanged knowing glances. Urschel's ordeal was far from over, but his willingness to cooperate, to relive those terrifying moments, fueled their determination to bring his captors to justice. Section 2, a blind journey, sensory clues, and a desperate hope for freedom. Urschel's journey into captivity was a sensory deprivation nightmare. Blindfolded, he clung to every sound, every smell, every bump in the road, desperate for any clue as to his whereabouts. The steady hum of the engine, the occasional chirp of crickets, the scent of pine needles and damp earth, these became his only anchors to reality. He described passing through small towns, the muffled sounds of life filtering through his blindfold, fueling his hope for freedom. He spoke of the endless stretches of open road, the car swaying precariously as it navigated dirt tracks, each turn a reminder of his isolation. Time lost all meaning, his dreams haunted by the faces of his captors, their voices a constant threat in the darkness. Yet, even in the depths of despair, Urschel's spirit refused to be broken. He clung to the hope of seeing his family again, of returning to the life that had been so brutally ripped away from him. Section 3. The second house, a glimmer of hope and a daring plan. After what felt like an eternity, the car screeched to a halt. Urschel, his senses heightened by days of confinement, registered the subtle changes in his environment. The air was thick with the smell of livestock, and he could hear the distant barking of dogs. He had been moved. He was led, still blindfolded, along a gravel path, the uneven ground making him stumble. He was pushed through a doorway, the musty scent of old wood and dust assaulting his nostrils. This was to be his new prison. It was here, in this second house, that Urschel's captors made a critical mistake. They allowed him to write a letter to his friend, John Catlett. The letter, a plea for help disguised as a simple message, became Urschel's lifeline. It was a risky move, but he had to gamble on his friend's ability to read between the lines. The letter, carefully smuggled out of the house, would set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to Urschel's release and the downfall of his captors. Section 4. Days of Uncertainty, a Captive's Resilience and the Promise of Release. The days that followed were a blur of monotony and fear. Urschel, chained to a chair, his movements restricted, fought against despair. He engaged his captors in conversation, gleaning what information he could about their operation, their motives, their identities. He learned their names, George Machine Gun Kelly and his accomplice, Albert Bates. He listened to their boasts, their tales of past crimes, their utter disregard for the law. He observed their habits, their routines, their weaknesses. He memorized every detail, knowing that this information could be his ticket to freedom. As the days turned into nights, Urschel's hope began to dwindle. The ransom had been paid, but there was no word of his release. Had his letter reached Catlett? Had the FBI given up on him? Was he destined to spend the rest of his days as a prisoner in this God-forsaken place? Just when his spirit was about to break, Kelly returned, a triumphant smirk on his face. "We're leaving," he announced, his voice laced with a mixture of excitement and menace. "You're a free man!" Urschel, his heart pounding in his chest, allowed himself a sliver of hope. Could this be true? Was he finally going home? The wheels of justice turned. The FBI closes in. With Urschel safely back home, the full force of the FBI's investigative power shifted into high gear. The G-men, fueled by a mixture of relief and righteous anger, were determined to bring the kidnappers to justice. No resource was spared, no lead left unexplored. The manhunt, spanning multiple states, became a race against time, a relentless pursuit of justice. Urschel's detailed account of his captivity, his keen observations, and his remarkable memory provided invaluable clues. He had paid close attention to every sound, every scent, every turn in the road during his blindfolded journeys. He recalled the distinctive drone of a particular airplane, its flight path consistent, its schedule predictable. This seemingly insignificant detail would prove to be a game changer. The FBI, utilizing their growing network of informants and their expertise in forensic analysis, meticulously pieced together the kidnappers' movements. The airplane they discovered belonged to a local flying club. Its flight logs, meticulously maintained, revealed a pattern of activity that correlated with Urschel's timeline. They were closing in, the net tightening around their prey. Meanwhile, Urschel's letter to Catlett, that desperate plea for help, had reached its destination. Catlett, a man of action, immediately contacted the FBI, sharing the precious message that confirmed Urschel's survival and offered a glimmer of hope in the desperate search. Section 2. A trail of evidence from Paradise to Oklahoma City. The investigation, like a puzzle with its pieces scattered across multiple states, began to come together. The FBI, following a trail of money and informants' tips, descended upon a remote ranch in Paradise, Texas. This seemingly idyllic location, far removed from the bustling city, held a dark secret. The ranch, owned by the Shannon family, was a haven for criminals, a place where fugitives could hide from the law. The Shannons, a close-knit clan with a penchant for violence and a deep distrust of authority, had unwittingly provided refuge to Urschel's kidnappers. The raid on the Shannon ranch was swift and decisive. Harvey Bailey, a hardened criminal with a reputation for ruthlessness, was apprehended along with several members of the Shannon family. A mountain of evidence, including firearms, stolen vehicles, and a portion of the ransom money, was seized. The arrests at the Shannon ranch sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. The G-men, once dismissed by some as a fledgling agency, had proven their mettle. They had infiltrated a notorious criminal network and brought down some of its most dangerous members. Section 3. The G-Men's triumph, convictions, sentences, and a legacy secured. The trial of Urschel's kidnappers was a media sensation, capturing the nation's attention. The courtroom, packed with journalists and curious onlookers, became a stage for a dramatic showdown between good and evil. The prosecution, armed with a mountain of evidence, and Urschel's compelling testimony, presented a compelling case. They detailed the kidnappers' meticulous planning, their brazen execution of the crime, and their callous disregard for human life. The defense, struggling against the tide of evidence, resorted to desperate measures, attempting to discredit Urschel's account and portray their clients as victims of circumstance, but their efforts were in vain. The jury, convinced of the defendant's guilt, returned a swift verdict. The sentences, handed down with the full weight of the law, reflected the severity of the crime. Harvey Bailey, the mastermind behind the kidnapping, along with George Machine Gun Kelly, received life sentences. Their accomplices, deemed less culpable but still complicit in the crime, were given lengthy prison terms. The successful prosecution of Urschel's kidnappers was a watershed moment for the FBI, solidifying its reputation as a formidable force in law enforcement. The G-Men, under J. Edgar Hoover's leadership, had proven their ability to tackle even the most complex and high-profile cases. Section 1. Justice Served. The aftermath of a sensational case. The Urschel kidnapping case, a whirlwind of fear, uncertainty, and ultimately justice served, faded from the headlines as quickly as it had emerged. The nation, captivated by the audacity of the crime and the drama of the trial, moved on to other pressing matters. But for those whose lives had been irrevocably touched by the events of that summer, the memories lingered, etched into their hearts and minds. Charles Urschel, forever marked by his ordeal, retreated from the public eye. The man who had once relished the trappings of wealth and success now sought solace in anonymity, shunning the spotlight that had once shone so brightly upon him. He dedicated his life to philanthropy, his wealth used to support causes close to his heart, his experiences a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of giving back. George Machine Gun Kelly, his notoriety reaching its peak during the trial, spent the remainder of his days behind bars, his dreams of easy riches and criminal infamy shattered. The man who had styled himself as a modern-day Robin Hood, a charming rogue operating outside the law, was exposed as a ruthless criminal, his legacy forever tarnished by the crime that had sealed his fate. The Urschel kidnapping case marked a turning point in American law enforcement. The G-Men, once a fledgling agency struggling to find its footing, emerged from the crucible of this high-profile case as a formidable force, their reputation for tenacity, ingenuity, and unwavering dedication to justice firmly established. Section 2. A lasting legacy, the G-Men and the enduring power of resilience. The Urschel kidnapping case, a testament to the depths of human depravity and the unwavering pursuit of justice, left an indelible mark on the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover, a shrewd and ambitious leader, recognized the transformative power of this victory. He seized the opportunity to elevate the Bureau's profile, transforming it into a symbol of American law and order, a bulwark against the forces of chaos and criminality. The G-Men, their ranks swelling with each passing year, became a fixture in the American consciousness, their exploits chronicled in newspapers and magazines, their image romanticized in Hollywood films. They were the new breed of lawman, highly trained, meticulously organized, and equipped with the latest technology, their reach extending from the bustling cities to the most remote corners of the nation. But the true legacy of the Urschel kidnapping case extended far beyond the walls of the FBI. It served as a powerful reminder of the importance of courage, resilience, and the unwavering belief in the power of justice to prevail. Charles Urschel, despite enduring unimaginable horrors, emerged from his ordeal with his spirit unbroken. If you've stayed with us until the end, we hope this captivating tale has left you wanting more. Show your appreciation with a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more thrilling journeys into the annals of true crime. Thanks for watching, and remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction.